It doesn't happen at home. At home, we have systems, structure. The routine is intact. The fridge is right. The alarm is set. The schedule is yours. No one is watching. Nothing is offering. Nothing is pulling you toward a version of yourself you said you were done with. The collapse doesn't happen there. The collapse happens at the table. The restaurant with 8 people, the client dinner where the bread arrived and you didn't order it, the awards evening that started at 7 and ended somewhere past midnight, and the only exercise you got was moving from the bar to the car. The conference dinner, the celebration, the quiet drinks after the session that was never going to be quick. Every one of those nights you called an exception. There are no exceptions. There are only decisions you chose not to make and named circumstances instead. If you're deciding at the table, you've already lost. You don't lose control at dinner. You arrive without it. And you think this is about saying no to wine, about ordering the chicken while the client orders a wagyu, about being the man at the table who makes everyone else feel watched. This isn't your episode. Close it down. This is for the man who already knows something is off, who can't name it, but feels it. Every time, on the drive home, in the mirror the next morning, in that specific half second before he looks away. He knows. He's known for a while, and that's the part he hasn't told anyone. The business dinner is not an obstacle to your standard. It is the test of it. Any man can hold a standard in a controlled environment. At home, with his own food, his own schedule, his own silence. No one watching, nothing at stake. That's not a standard. That's a preference. A preference holds when nothing challenges it. A standard holds when everything does. A standard that matters, the one that defines the man, is the one that survives the environment designed to erase it. At the table where the wine was already open when you arrived, in the room where the client poured and something in you said it would seem rude not to. After the flight, the long one, the one where you didn't sleep, the seat was narrow. You landed at 6 and pushed straight through to the evening and told yourself you'd find your footing once you got there. You didn't find it because the environment is not occasional. At your level, the environment is the job. The dinners, the functions, the relationship maintenance that happens across a table and not in an email. The industry preference, industry presence even. It doesn't stop. It was never going to stop. If your standard only holds at home, your standard doesn't hold. It waits. And while it waits, the drift happens. Quietly, without announcement, one dinner at a time, one reach at a time, one justice once at a time. Standards don't collapse in moments, they erode in patterns. And the pattern looks like this. Picture the moment, not in general, not the concept of a dinner, this moment. You're already there, table for 8, the kind of restaurant where the lighting is low, not accidentally low, deliberately low, chosen by someone who understood that low light softens judgment. The leather on the chairs is thick, the kind that absorbs sound, the kind that makes a man settle into himself before the evening has even started. The menu doesn't have prices on the copy they hand the clients. You know this room, you've been in this room or a version of this room more times than you can count. The table is already moving. Somebody is mid-story. Somebody is laughing. The client across you is relaxed. And that's good. That's what you came for. And then bread. And then the bread arrives. Nobody ordered it. It just appears. Warm in a cloth basket. Steam still coming off it. That smell. The kind that hits before any decision has been made. Before the mind is even in the room. The server sits down right there between you and the man you're there to close. Doesn't say a word. Just places it and moves. You weren't hungry when you arrived. You know that. You remember that. But the conversation is flowing. The room is warm. There's already a glass in front of you. You don't remember it being poured, but it's there and is being touched. The man across you is mid-sentence. Something about Q3. You're tracking it. You're present. You're performing exactly as expected. Everything is exactly as it should be. And then your hand moves. Not a decision, no calculation, no internal weighing, no voice that said yes or no. Your hand just moves. And you know he didn't decide to. And that moment, that reach, that is what this entire episode is about. Not the bread, not the calories, not even the choice. The reach. The automatic reach. The reach that arrived before you did. Because the real decision was made before you walked through the door. You just weren't the one who made it. The response is predictable. I know it because it's the same response. Every time. In every man who has sat in that room. I can't control what happens in client situations. It's part of culture. These relationships matter. You don't understand the level these relationships operate at. Declining looks antisocial. I'm not going to be the guy who makes the table uncomfortable. I'm not going to sit there with sparkling water while everyone else. Nobody said anything about sparkling water. Here's what's actually happening. You are using the relationship, the one that genuinely matters, as a hiding place. The client is not watching your plate. The client is in his own head, performing his own version of present, running his own quiet calculation. He's not monitoring you. You are. Here's what antisocial actually means. Not the word you've been using, the real definition. It means you haven't decided what you're doing before you walk through the door. So the room decides. And you call that a culture. Antisocial isn't the man who declines the bread. It's the man who needed the room's permission to eat it. You walk into every other negotiation with a position. You know what you'll concede. You know what you won't. You've never once sat across from a client and waited to see how he opened before deciding what you stood for. Not once. A dinner is a meeting. You just stopped preparing for it. And underneath all of it, underneath the culture and the relationships, there is a quieter thing. I've worked hard. I deserve to enjoy the evening. I know. But the man who has truly earned it doesn't need the room to hand it to him. He already decided what it looks like before he arrived. Standards don't fail under pressure. They get exposed. Here's the precise dynamic. Stay with this one. You control the boardroom. You control the negotiation. You control who gets hired and who gets let go. You control where the capital goes. You control who gets a seat at your table and who doesn't get a callback. Multimillion-dollar decisions, real ones, under pressure, with incomplete information, with real consequences if you call it wrong. You make those without paralysis, without asking for permission. And then you sit down at dinner and the room runs you. The bread arrives, you eat it. The wine is poured, you drink it. The dessert menu appears, you look. The night moves past midnight, you stay. Not because you chose any of it, because you arrived without a position, and the environment filled the space where a decision should have been. The way it always fills that space, the way it was built to. The man who controls multi-million-dollar decisions got managed by a breadbasket. And that's a part you don't say out loud because it sounds ridiculous. And true. Don't move past that line. Sit in it. That's not a character flaw. That is a preparation failure. And preparation failures in your world have consequences. You prepared for every other part of that evening. The conversation, the positioning, the objective, the numbers in your head. You don't prepare for yourself. And underneath it was a good evening, underneath the deal was moving, you already know that. The thing on the drive home, that quiet thing, not guilt, not quiet guilt, something that sits lower. The hum of a man who held every professional standard that night, performed at exactly the level expected, and quietly abandoned the only standard he set for himself. He doesn't say anything about it, doesn't mention it to his wife when he gets in, doesn't log it anywhere. He adjusts the seatbelt on the drive home, catches his reflection in the dark window at a red light, for just a second, and looks away. Picks up his phone at the light, puts it back down. Doesn't know why he picked it up. Tells himself tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow doesn't start different. It starts with the same man, same reach, different table, same outcome. And the one after that, and the one after that, because a pattern doesn't break on its own. Patterns don't feel like patterns from the inside. They feel like circumstances. The problem was never the dinner. The problem is the man who walked in without deciding who he was going to be there. And that man runs a tight ship everywhere else, which is exactly what makes this specific. Here's the part most men want to skip, because the comfortable version of the story is willpower. I just need more discipline at dinner. I just need to be stricter. I just need to want it more. That story lets you stay in control of the narrative. Here's what actually happened. By the time you sat down at that table, the version of you makes disciplined decisions. The version of you that makes disciplined decisions was already gone. Not weak, not broken, not failed. Gone. Spent across a day. Used on the calls. Used on the calls, the negotiations, the judgment calls that actually mattered. The hire you had to make under pressure. The thing that came in at 4 that you can hand off. The decision you were still running in the back of your mind in the car on the way there. By 9 in the evening, the faculty was empty, and the resistance to immediate pleasure, a quiet voice that says, you don't need this. That voice runs on the same fuel. It wasn't there. And the room, the warm room, the unhurried room, The room built to feel like the absence of consequence. The room already knew this. Not maliciously, but the menu was built for it. The pacing was built for it. The shared plates and the just try this and the refill that appeared before you decided, all of it designed to land at the exact moment your threshold was already gone. This was always going to happen. Not because you're weak, because you walked into a room engineered for depleted men. As a depleted man, and expected the version of yourself from 8 that morning to hold the line. He wasn't there. He left hours ago. Decisions made late don't hold. They were never fucking held. You just kept hoping that this one would be different. Hope is not a standard. It's what fills the space where a decision wasn't made. There is one move, not a system, not a framework, not a menu of options. One move. Before you walk in, you make the decision. One. Non-negotiable. Made when the man making it is still the man you recognize. Not at the table. The table is too late. The anchor is set before the room exists. Everything inside the room, the conversations, the relationship, the evening remains open. The anchor doesn't. This is not deprivation. This is not performance. This is not the man who turns dinner into a demonstration. This is the man who already decided, quietly, before he arrived, the way he decides everything else that actually matters. You don't fight the room. You make the decision before the room has a chance to make it for you. That's the whole thing. Every decision you've been calling a circumstance was made in advance. You just didn't make it. So the environment did. And you called it culture. You called it the nature of the business. You called it the relationship. The default is not neutral. The default is the room's choice. And the room's choice, every time, without exception, is toward immediate pleasure and away from the standards you set when you were still thinking clearly. This is not a moral failure. It's physics. Downhill. The man who holds a standard does not fight gravity in real time. He changes the terrain before he arrives. Think about that table again. The basket, the steam, your hand. That wasn't a failure of character. That was the terrain running you because you hadn't changed it. Prepare for the dinner the way you prepare for the deal, with a position and a line you do not cross. Not because you're disciplined, not because you're strict, because you decided before the room had the chance. The decision already made is the only decision that holds. Everything else is just hope at the table for 8. The social environment is where the standard is most publicly visible and most privately abandoned. Not because a man is weak, because he arrived without a decision. Every dinner is a question, not of willpower, of preparation. The man who arrives with the anchor set doesn't experience a room as a threat. He's not washing the basket. He's not negotiating with himself between courses. He's not spending the drive home cataloging what he should have done. He's just there, present, in the room for the reason he came. And he leaves with his standard intact. Not because he resisted, because it was never in question. He decided before he walked in, when he was still the man capable of deciding. That is the difference. That is the difference between the man who holds a standard and the man who intends to. Intention without a decision is hope dressed up in discipline's clothing. The next time the bread lands, notice your hand. Watch it. That's where the decision actually lives. And hope doesn't hold at the table for 8 when the wine is open and the bread is warm and the room is doing exactly what it was built to do. The next time you sit down and the basket arrives and the room is warm and your hand moves before you've decided, you'll know. Not what to do, who made the decision, and whether it was you or the table. Most men will hear this and stay exactly the same. A few won't. And you'll find out at the next table you sit at. This is Iron Suits, where strength wears the crown. I am Marwan. Next episode, the Frequent Flyer's Physique. How to hold a standard when the infrastructure disappears. The hotel room. The terminal at 6 in the morning. The city that isn't yours. The minibar. The room service menu at midnight. The day with no structure and nowhere to be until the keynote at 2. Same man, different terrain, same question. I'll see you there. If this episode hit a nerve, make sure to share it with another leader who is a little bit soft. Leave me a positive review on iTunes. That'll really help the show grow and help spread the message and help more people change. We all benefit from it. Make sure to follow me on my socials. I am on Facebook under Marwan Killu, LinkedIn, Marwan Killu Fitness. You can watch this on YouTube under Marwan Killu. And I think that's it. I don't remember anything else. I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.